Can we move now to the opposition to the item recycling bin replacement fiasco? Councillor Sniper, do you move your opposition to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The introduction of Barnet's new recycling service has been a total and utter fiasco. Rubbish has been piling up, bins are not being collected, bins are not being delivered, and yet in some streets you can't move the blue bins. I'm sure there can't be many members here who've not been inundated with complaints from residents. Now many, but not all of these, have been resolved. But it's no wonder that a local newspaper poll found that 67% of people said they weren't happy with the new recycling scheme. And if Councillor Cohen had gone to any of the recent residents' forums, he would be able to appreciate why Barnet's bins can now be added to the list of Tory incompetence. We also know that Councillor Cohen is apoplectic, or even apocalyptic, about the repeated delays to the delivery of the new recycling bins. But apologies aren't enough. Residents who've just seen the majority of the council services outsourced on 10-year contracts need to know that private sector suppliers will be held to account. But unfortunately, this is yet another Barnet contract that has failed to deliver, literally in this case. There can be no excuses. If contracts mean anything, a financial penalty needs to be imposed straight away, and I hope that Councillor Cohen will be able to confirm this shortly. One of the excuses, Mr. Mayor, for the fiasco is that the supplier underestimated the resource required and the deployment of bins, considering the intricacies and complexities of Barnet. Surely that should have been covered in the contract in the first place. But, Mr. Mayor, it was all going wrong even before the first new bin had even been delivered. The failure to have a contract in place until the very last minute to handle the waste collected from the new service has contributed to an overspend of £1 million a year. The one thing this Tory administration is good at is wasting money. But to make it worse, it must surely be spectacularly bad timing that in the week the new co-mingled service started, a letter was received from DEFRA reminding councils about the revised EU Waste Framework Directive requiring separate collections. Now, the Cabinet member states that he was aware of the requirements of this directive, but yet nowhere in the Cabinet report when the decision was taken in April last year does it refer to the risk of moving away from separate collections. The DEFRA letter says that local authorities should consult their own lawyers as necessary and should keep a clear audit trail given the potential for legal challenge. Has this actually been done? Again, there's no mention of it in the report when this decision was taken. Another thing not mentioned is where our recycling materials are sent. A great feature of the old system was that materials were collected and recycled in the UK. Now we're told much of it could go overseas, and I know this concerns many residents. Can we be told, as my colleague Councillor Hutton asked earlier, which countries is our recycling actually going to? Now, Mr. Mayor, let me just say a bit about the blue bin plague afflicting so many of our streets. This is the result of an inflexible system that was introduced with no consultation in advance with residents about what bins people needed, or indeed had room for. As a result, we have some houses and streets looking like recycling depots. For instance, a small terraced house with 6 bedsits has 6 wheelie bins in the front garden. And of course, where bins can't fit in the front garden, they're creating an eyesore in the street. Some residents, particularly those living on their own, would have been happy to share a bin had they been asked. Many simply wanted a smaller bin. And there were even houses with room for a bin that have been told to use bags instead. It's all very well saying this will be sorted out in January. It should have been sorted out in advance, but it needs to be sorted out now. But as we know, it wasn't sorted out in advance because this Tory administration doesn't believe in consultation. Mr. Mayor, I think we all share and welcome any increase in the amount of waste we recycle. It's just unfortunate that the new system has been introduced in such a shambolic way. Mr. Mayor, I was trying to come up with a good joke about bins, but in the absence of one, I'll just finish by saying it's time for this Tory administration to be binned, and next year I hope they will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move my amendment in my name. One of the first things I learned in the world of business is show gratitude to one's workforce. Therefore, it is on this note, despite the two negative motions tabled by two members in this chamber, I would like to publicly thank all my officers for all their hard work, long hours and true dedication to this project. This project is one of the largest, if not the largest, changes in refuse recycling that any local authority has done in one hit. The changes include a brand new fleet of 40 vehicles, changing from curbside sorting to commingled recycling, separate food waste collection. As well as the new bins and equipment, 76 members of peer-made Gurney staff have been brought in-house and have been mixed in with the Barnet current staff. New routes have been designed with a route optimisation software to achieve data and planning efficiencies, along the knowledge of the crews as well as a single bin day for recycling, food and residual waste. Our Summers Lane site has had a makeover and continues to be a popular and excellent service to the residents of this borough. Yet, Mr. Mayor, the delivery of bins to 500 properties were delivered late, which I did let all members know about and did, as promised, write all residents that were affected by this to apologise. We were severely let down by supply in that they failed to adhere to the distribution programme which was agreed between the council and our supplier. Officers are in talks with our supplier, and I can assure council that we'll be seeking the appropriate redress from the supplier for this failure. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Coleman says that in order for recycling to be successful, you need total community buy-in. Yes, that is correct, and that applies to everything, including parking. Councillor Coleman, I'm personally doing my utmost to ensure that as many people's individual requests and needs are met, which includes myself, meeting with residents, groups and individuals across the borough. While we're on the subject of community buy-in, it was Councillor Coleman, when he was Cabinet Member for the Environment, that brought to Cabinet in April 2012 the recycling proposal, and that this Council has just been implemented. So, the success of this project is already evident for the first couple of weeks from the tonnage of both food and commingled recycling. These figures are phenomenal. The first full week commencing 25th of October, we collected 568 tonnes of commingled recycling and 145 tonnes of food waste. This week collected 502 tonnes of commingled and 173 tonnes of food waste. So much for the shambles. Mr. Mayor, like with any big change like this, you're going to get teething issues, such as miscollections. But as the crews get used to the new vehicles, the new rounds and the system as a whole, I am sure the miscollections will reduce and the operation will become faster and more efficient. Currently we have a team of door knockers making their way around the borough to answer questions on the new scheme and address concerns and issues which are then fed back to my officers. We're requiring a minimum 40% contact rate, and to date we have spoken to 10,275 residents, which is approximately 10% of that contact rate. The number of issues that are coming back: the brown bin is too small. They've not had, which we are now offering a second bin to those people that want. Have not received the bins that's pretty much been resolved. The food bin, the food bags, which I've asked officers to look into. Collection of redundant black Bugle boxes, we are in the process of collecting these, and collection dates and miscollections, we're dealing that as and when they occur. Mr. Mayor, this project was progressed to increase the amount of recycling that residents recycle in this borough, which prior to the implementation of the operation was approximately 33%. Yes, there was a delay in the rollout of a small percentage of the bins, and yes, there have been the inevitable teething issues on the collections. But overall, this project has been a huge success. This success will ultimately benefit the residents of this borough, both financially and environmentally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my amendment in my name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I would join with Councillor Bugle in complimenting our staff, particularly in dealing with the problems that have arisen, which they've been absolutely marvellous in so doing. But indeed, the new system which has been put in would be a very good plot for Yes Minister. And I could just imagine Sir Humphrey saying, Councillor Bugle, that was a truly courageous decision. The real world, Mr. Mayor, was brought home to me this morning at 6:45 a.m. when our wonderful team of green bin collectors were in the street looking for the green bins. The accent must be on looking because they were there on the wrong day. The area, which I then ascertained, had been given notices, including myself, that the green bins should be put out tomorrow. But today was the day the bin collectors are there. So our staff say quite clearly, don't worry, Councillor Palmer, in 2 weeks' time they will collect the green bins. So therefore, that's not a 2-week collection, that's a 4-week collection. That is a shambles by anyone's description. You couldn't make it up. And we've already heard there was no contract in place, you couldn't make it up. And we've heard about the poor delivery of bins, you couldn't make it up. Too many bins, well, some people like them, I mean there is people who are really hooked on bins, but if you have a property which is terraced and not a lot of space, then the bins are not a good idea. Now what have we now got in the London Borough of Barnet? We have this environmental hazard of unsightly bins everywhere. You don't see lovely gardens with flowers and little shrubs and people going about their daily business. What do you see? Grey bins, blue bins, brown bins, any colour bin you want, and that is what you see. And where do you just remember those who are of my age? When the bin collectors came into your garden, went to the back garden, took the bin up and emptied it. Oh, those halcyon days, halcyon days, halcyon days indeed. And then of course, people were worried when they saw the bin collectors putting the contents of the brown bins, remember the brown bins, that's the food waste, if you don't remember, and they're putting it in a blue bin and wheeling it off to the truck. Well, I am assured that they go into a separate compartment of that truck, and I quite believe that, but it wouldn't have taken a stretch of imagination to have one brown bin which they could put the brown in, so it didn't end up with people phoning up Councillor Suzette Palmer with this wonderful story about they put it all in the same place. Then we come to the question of the mixed recycling. I hope it works. I rather like the fact you throw everything in the blue bin. What happens at the end of the story, and I'm not sure, and whether that actually works. I was talking about this to the Minister of the Lords and Morley about it only the other day. I said what happened to it, and he said he's put it to his ministers, to his officers to ask about it, so wait for the answer. But what happens, members, if you put the wrong items in the blue bin? How does anyone know what's in that bin until you empty that bin? And what is the penalty, fellow councillors, for not using the recycling service? For instance, if you're somebody, and I met someone the other day, who said, I'm not going to bother with this, I'm just going to throw it all in my grey bin. Well, what is the penalty for so doing? I haven't heard, and how do you know that they're not using it? Well, you see, I suppose, that the blue bin is empty, then are we going to say that should not be emptied? So, firstly, Mr. Mayor, I think it is a shambles. And I don't know, I noticed in Councillor Decoe's motion, he points about October the 14th as being a really marvellous day, and I think it should be henceforth celebrated as Barnet's Garbage Day.
I repeat the statement I made earlier on. There are lots of speakers, and if members could keep brief as possible, that would be helpful. Otherwise, I may have to bring the debate to the conclusion prior. So, I think Councillor Coleman, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the amendment in my name. As rolled out in
in local government and indeed in life in general. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's the situation we are with the recycling. Co-mingling simply doesn't produce the quality of waste that you need. And anybody who's been to a co-mingled plant and seen how it's dealt with, I can see some nods. And anyone who remembers the fiasco at Sutton Borough Council's recycling collection in the early, where their figures were grossly inflated. And curbside sort is the only efficient, cost-efficient way of doing it, as Lord de Morley has quite rightly reminded councils in his recent letter. So we will have to go back to curbside sort, just because the quality of the recyclates that are produced is not there in a co-mingled scheme. Councillor Lord Palmer says, well, how does the council know whether you're recycling? Because there's a unique chip or whatever it is on the label on every bin if you look at those bins. And if you don't want the council to know what's going in your bin, you better peel that off all those bins. That's how the council will know. Mr. Mayor, I may have done many things in my career. but I've never moved an amendment congratulating myself on my strong leadership and encouraging myself to press ahead with the policy. So I have to say, it's wonderfully stylish language, Councillor Dean Cohen. But what we've got here, Mr. Mayor, is a service that was well loved and respected and, more importantly, understood. And what we have got now is a service that people don't understand, combined with the double whammy that the Waste Disposal Authority, and I suspect there are many members in this chamber who don't understand the difference between a Waste Collection Authority, which Barnet Council is, and a Waste Disposal Authority, which Barnet Council is not. You are not one of those members, Mr. Mayor, because you have long and distinguished experience of serving on the Waste Disposal Authority. But at the same time as we are, as Councillor Dean Cohen says, changing fundamentally the way we collect our rubbish, the Waste Disposal Authority kicked us in the teeth by saying they've got no scheme in place for proper disposal going ahead, that they had abandoned the £21 million they'd already spent on trying to procure a waste disposal for 7 North London boroughs. And there is therefore no clear route for what is happening to our recyclates that we are delivering to the Waste Disposal Authority. That's why the confusion has come across. There are many waste disposal authorities in this country that routinely fill up ships to China. In come the ships from China with all those goods residents buy at Christmas, etc., and back go the empty ships to China full of recyclates from England's waste. And the problem, we have failed to tell the narrative of what is happening to that recycling. So it's not just a matter of tonnage, Mr. Mayor, as you will know. It's not just a matter of tonnage, it's a matter of the quality of the paper, the quality of the asbestos, the quality of the cardboard, etc., that is coming out of the recycling collections. And although curbside sorting wasn't perfect, too much was left in the gutter, etc., it is a far more superior system. And for once, Mr. Mayor, I have to say, the European Union is correct in imposing these rules and conditions on members to do with recycling. And the government, Conservative Minister Lord de Morley, is also correct. The only way you're going to achieve the national targets, the targets that we all want, is by abandoning co-mingled. You all know you've got to do it, Mr. Mayor, next year after the elections. You've got to backtrack on this. Mr. Mayor, I support the amendment to my note.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It really is the same old story. You couldn't trust the Tories when it came to carping, and the same now applies to the recycling system. Errors that have dogged this administration are once again being shown to have taken place in what has been an utter fiasco. Namely, that this administration never seems to get it right when it comes to both communication and consultation. Yes, it's laudable and sensible to be encouraging more recycling, but the way in which the service has changed has resulted in many criticisms and complaints. Everyone was affected by a whole week of missed collections, so much then for promising to never go to fortnightly collections. Then we had the imposition of the one and then two sizes fits all. You can have a blue bin or plastic bags. Yet there are many flats in my ward with many photos sent through on email which now have lines of blue bins, brown bins, black bins, nowhere to be hidden discreetly, and far from enhancing the street scene, are unsightly. And at the very least, from an appearance perspective, just why didn't it dawn on someone to just have the lids a different colour? I have got no idea. Would it have not made sense to have offered fewer bins to area of flats, or to the very least have given people a choice, so that we could have got it right the first time round, instead of having to review the system next January? And then there's the big mix-up and angst over the old recycling boxes. The emails continue. First of all, it's leave them next to the big blue bin and we'll take them in 48 hours. Well, some were. Others have been slung back within the property boundary. While others that wanted to keep their boxes have had the recycling crews go within their boundaries, empty out the leaves they've collected and spread them all over their garden and then taken them away. Others, which have asked the bin lorries when they've been there to take them away, are seeing the recyclable boxes then put into the back of the black bin lorry. So no recycling there then. So yes, market conditions and prices will change, but please give the residents the information about what happens to our recycling, even if it's in retrospect. Surely it's obvious that the more information we have about what happens to our recycled collections, what funds we receive, and the final destination of our waste, the more people will appreciate the need to send less to landfill. And then we come to the response from the Cabinet member on the bins which were not delivered on time. That officers will be seeking redress through the contract for this non-performance. You know, a word just to mean it doesn't take place. I take it that this is still open to negotiation, because if there was a clause in the contract, that information should have been brought to this meeting this evening. And so it's yet another fine mess we find ourselves in, with alarm bells ringing, to second guess what other clauses in a myriad of contracts we may not have covered ourselves for. If we can impose the financial sanctions, we should be doing it now, along with an urgent review of the bins on offer and informing the public from A to Z of what happens when it's picked up to where it ends up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the last 3.5 years, Mr. Mayor, we've heard nothing but bring things back in-house, don't outsource to Capita, don't outsource to whoever the other companies were. The minute we bring something back in-house, fully working in-house, they do nothing but slag off our staff completely and utterly. Tonight has been a disgrace towards our staff who've done a fantastic job, a colossal job, and a colossal task. And the opposition say that we didn't consult, we didn't tell people what was happening, but I quite clearly remember reading Barnet first, where Councillor Dean Coe quite clearly states that this is a large task, so please bear with us. And there has been 1% of problem in deliveries. But it also goes on to say that if you have any queries, then please contact the council. And this hiding of knowledge and information also says it on the back. So the residents are fully aware who to contact. And it may surprise the opposition that quite a few residents have actually contacted the council. And it may surprise the opposition that there is actually a programme for going out and discussing residents' needs regarding bins. And it might even surprise the opposition that a lot of people who actually wanted blue bins, who didn't want blue bins, have now actually asked for the blue bins. So, what is it about all this contractual non-performance? We're very, very hard on everybody who doesn't perform in the private sector, but what should we do about a driver that misses a street or a lane? Do we sack them as well, the same way we get back as much money from the contractor? No, we don't. We try and address the issues and work as best we can to collect as much recycling as we can do, because it will save our taxpayers from increases in colossal land charges that will be imposed on them should we continue to landfill. And in terms of your motion, Councillor Schneiderman, it's a disgrace. Some of the words you use: fiasco, chaos, saga, get a grip. I'm here to tell you now, you don't even know the meaning of the word saga. Do you? You do not know the meaning of the word saga. In case you're interested, a saga is a long series of incidents ending in heroic achievement. So when you say that actually means this heroic achievement has been a failure. I suggest you go back and learn English before you try to teach us how to do a bit of recycling. no chaos and saga, is that we converse with residents and find out their needs. Well, Mr Mayor, as we were already doing that, I think it is worth commending Councillor Bugle for doing an excellent job, Cameron Wolf, the director of place, and Lily Bishop, the manager of the street scene, for doing a tremendous job and delivering over 300,000 bins and getting the system up and running. And in case you're interested, it was not mentioned at the Chipping Barnet Forum. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
At no point has any Labour councillor slagged off officers, and we're all very clear of the hard work that has gone on. But I have to say, you tried to get through the call centre because most residents haven't been able to do so, and that's why they've been coming to councillors.
Yeah. Councillor Agnes, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, after that shouting, it's done my head in. Quietly and all that shouting. Mr Mayor, I have to say, I won't insult anybody here because it's uncalled for. We all have our views with our residents, and they all come to us, whether you're Labour, Liberal, Conservative, they all come to us. So we have to say what they ask us about. Mr Mayor, I have to say that I'm old and responsible enough to know that any new project comes with teething, hiccups, indigestion, you name it, it does not go straight. So I am aware of that. But, Mr Mayor, what I don't understand is what happens. What had happened, we said the date was on the 14th of October. Then the vans turned up on Tuesday before. No one knew that. What happened on the 14th? There were no collections. We were told then the men had gone out for training. Mr Mayor, what kind of brain is that? Didn't we know that there were going to be the training there on the 14th before we told the residents that we are going to pick up on the 14th? Surely somebody is responsible for that. On the next day, Mr Mayor, there was the big Heathrow truck telling us, parked in the middle of the road, which was annoying, 70 bins along the street, and the men sticking the labels of the house on the street. No one could pass, no traffic, nothing for 2 solid hours. Bad organizing. As far as the brown bins is concerned, we could have only been delivered one bin. The small bin in solid is neither use or ornament. Just be quiet and listen, you might learn something. Say like I rubbish to you because you don't have anything to do. I beg your pardon, Mr. Mayor, I shouldn't be speaking across things like that. The third thing is the role of the compostable bags will only suit a small family. Large houses with 10 people, can you imagine the few compostable bins that we have, the bags? That's no good to them. Mr. Mayor, one of my residents, when his was finished, came to me and showed me the receipt. He went to a certain supermarket. I'm not going to call the name because I'm not in that business. But the point is, it cost him £4.80 for a large family. That's not fair. Can we have the food put into the large bin when the compostable bins are finished? We need to think it over again and stop insulting each other, but listen and try to see how we can solve this business. I like my blue bin because I can dump everything washed and clean. I don't put anything dirty. I make sure it's clean. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd been forgotten. I come like the old Mayor Jack, little fellow with the shovel behind. Everything has been said, basically. I was going to make fun of poor Councillor Schneiderman's use of the English language. He's not very good at it. I had to admonish him quite recently over parking when he called it a shambles. It's working marvellously, thanks to Councillor Dean Cohen. And this is going to work marvellously. Now, the aim of these blue bins, nobody's mentioned it, is to double the amount of waste that we collect. We wouldn't otherwise. We've got to make it easy for people. They're quite willing to collect things and do good things. People want to be there, but it's got to be easy. So they have a blue bin. They pop it in. It goes. And if you have too many blue bins in a very tight area, all you have to ask is, could we share a bin with our neighbour? They're doing that already in good old Mill Hill. Thank you, Councillor Dean Cohen, for arranging it. Right. Now we have doubled the amount. I'm old enough to remember when in the City of London there were export merchants whose task, job, whose livelihood was the export of rubbish. Waste, call it waste. There were paper agents. I remember the name of one, Phillips and Son. I can still see their warehouse with newsprint up to the ceiling. There were colour merchants. Perhaps you don't know what colours is. Broken glass. They used to export broken glass. Why not? Make bottles somewhere else. They used to export metals. But scrap merchants? Well, all iron is useful. You re-smelt it, you sell it to Spain or somewhere, and it goes to the Basque country, and it turns into steel. I really don't see why you're worried where it ends up. If it goes to China, goodbye. Who wants to... Now, Richard, you know, Mr. Mayor, big enterprises, the point has been made that things will go wrong in part of the world. But what we do is, in fact, rectify. And so far, the system has been rectified. Most people are well pleased with the system. Most people are well pleased at having the facility to save more rubbish. They feel good about it. Let's make them feel good. Now, Mr. Councillor Schmeiderman talks about streets with rubbish piled high. Well, I travelled out, I didn't see many. I wondered if he was looking at an old TV library picture of the winter of discontent. Huge Labour success! Well, there we are. The mention has been made of the new vehicles, and I won't go on with things that people have said already. Staff should be congratulated, not reviled. They have worked very hard indeed, from officers down. I'm on the same committee as Councillor Cohen, so I do know as it happens. Now, bin size is a standard. It's not going to ask you for teensy-weensy blue bins. They can put no, share your big bin with your two or three neighbours, and then it will be perfect right. I can't fill my rubbish bin with it. I'm going to suggest to my neighbour perhaps he might like to help me. Right, okay then. Secondly, it's disappointment. There's another disappointment, I think, for Councillor Schneiderman. The facility at Edmonton Recycling Centre, I found out about it, Biffa Materials Recovery Facility, is working well. There are 70 men working there. How do they sort the rubbish? I'm very curious. Well, magnets for metals is an obvious one. Vibrators that push heavy stuff to the bottom and light stuff to the top. And I intend to go and visit it. I want to see this operating, and I invite Councillor Schneiderman to come with me. Now, to summarise, Mr. Mayor, and I see the light is coming on, if my favourite comedian was still on earth today, Mr. Morecambe, of Morecambe and Wise, I think he would agree with me in his assessment of this business item proposed by Councillor Schneiderman, sorry Councillor, in prose and in context. And I fear he would say with me, rubbish. Support the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What can I say? I think a lot of the stories we have heard tonight have confirmed what I put in my motion, that this is a shambles and a fiasco. We heard the stories from Councillor Palmer, Councillor Cohen, Councillor Coakley-Webb and Councillor Slocum. It's glad to hear that everything is sweetness and light in Chipping Barnet and that nobody has contacted Councillor Longstaff about their problems. Probably not worth bothering. But let me just say, when it comes to this issue about staff, I have not criticised staff in my motion. We are happy to congratulate officers that are doing well, and I particularly want to thank the staff who have to go out collecting all these dustbins day in and day out, often in cooling weather. So I've got great admiration for them. Unlike Councillor Dean Cohen, and this was raised by Councillor Coleman, he says about praising officers, and then when it comes to, he then says, but the responsibility, rather than talking about mistakes, he says, he talks about praising his own strong leadership, which is absolutely ridiculous. What we didn't hear from Councillor Cohen is any answer to any of the issues that were actually raised. There was no commitment to actually sorting out the issues now, giving people who want a smaller bin one now, rather than wait till January. It was press ahead with the one size fits all. There was no mention in his speech about the quality of the recyclers raised by Councillor Coleman, and there was no mention of where our recycling is going. Councillor Hart's quite happy for it to go to China, but many residents I speak to are not happy for that. They want our recycling kept in this country. They don't want to know that they're doing their bit to keep waste out of landfill just for it to be exported to some other country. And this has the potential to have a negative impact on the whole recycling programme. And Councillor Cohen talks about being the largest change. It may well have been a large change, but the handling of it was shambolic. And another point is how I actually agree with Councillor Coleman's amendment. Many residents who try to ring up can't get through on the telephone. They spend ages on the telephone and can't get through and can't get an answer to their queries. One lady, I contacted me the other day, had been trying to get her recycling collected for 3 weeks and was told she wasn't going to get a blue bin, was due to get bagged, but was still waiting for that. It just compounds it when people can't even get their issues resolved by being able to get through. We all want to see more recycling collected, but what we need. The system was introduced in a shambolic way, and there have been no answers to any of the questions that needed to be addressed around the quality of recycling, where it's going, and about the legality of the co-mingled system. This and there, but luckily, this story demonstrated once and
vote on the two amendments in the order in which they were actually received. First of all, the vote to be taken on Councillor Coleman's amendment. Could those in favour of Councillor Coleman's amendment please show?
22, Mr. Mayor.
Those against?
That's 35, Mr. Mayor, so it's lost.
Thank you. Now the vote to be taken on Councillor Dean Cohen's amendment. Could those in favour please show?
35, Mr. Mayor.
Those against?
22, Mr. Mayor. Motion is carried, or amendment is carried.
Finally, the vote to be taken please on the substantive opposition item. Those in favour, could they please show?
$35, Mr. Mayor.
Those against?
22, Mr. Mayor. Motion is carried.
Okay. It's now 5 to 9. We'll break for